Hello and welcome back. We're coming in hot on Season 2 of Tales of Eldalorn. This is Karleigh again. Music, art, and imagination and storytelling have always been a big part of my life, so I'm pleased to have this time to write it all down. With that said, Heru Mith, which means, let the story begin. In our last episode, Chapter 12, we left off with Eijlam harming himself. The repercussions were devastating, but let's not go into that. We're starting a new season, and here's the rest of the story. Chapter 13, Days of the Fall. When Eijlam woke, his neck was bandaged. His wound had already begun to heal. He looked pale and resolute, staring up at the all-too-familiar wooden beams above his bed. Wizard magics paralyzed his body. He lay there in silence, still confused and angry. In the other room, he could hear Fionna crying. He felt the depths of how far he'd fallen into the abyss of grief. Why was I even born? To cause such pain, he thought to himself. Feeling miserable, he turned his face to the wall. You must try to talk to him, Fionna. You are his only hope of survival, Vargol said tiredly. They were in the main room of the house talking about what had just happened. For some reason, Fionna felt guilty. She covered her face in her hands, sobbing at the table. He did not even see me when it mattered most. I am nothing to him. Her heart broke at the thought of that. She looked towards his room fearfully, as if there was a rabid animal in there. His actions are not your fault, Fionna, her papa said, consoling her with a hand on her shoulder as he spoke. I should have warned you this was coming. It's part of the healing. We do not have the luxury of Lady Galbraith or the ancient elder kings. They've all left this realm. Then what hope is there for him, Papa? Fionna asked, feeling the despair of the situation. Why would he want to stay if everyone he knows and loves is gone? Fionna had a hurt look on her face. She was about to make another comment. Instead, she bit her tongue. Eijlam had taught her about self-control, and in remembering him as he once was, Fionna burst into sobs again. Her wet eyes flashed at Vargol, betraying her true feelings for Eijlam. He will not be this way forever, Fionna. The truth of his memories and his kindness here will come back to him. Okay. Fionna pulled away from his comforting hand. I will do what I can. Fionna sadly gave in to Vargol's wishes, knowing he would not let her off the hook. She abruptly stood up and left the room to try to get some rest. The wizard's magics had reversed Eijlam's blood flow, so Fiona's face and clothes were spotless. She wanted to set fire to her dress. Instead, she tore it off and angrily threw it into the corner as she fell face down, crying on her bed. How hard it is turning out to bring one boy back into the realm from which he was born. We cannot lose him now, the wizard thought to himself. Vargol sat himself down near the hearth fire, heavy in thought. He took a deep breath. We are lucky Eijlam did not seem to know his powers. He didn't want to frighten Fionna more than the situation already had, so he kept this to himself. He would not believe that the kind-hearted Eijlam they had known these past weeks would genuinely want to harm them once he was over the shock. He rather liked the boy, and he was sure Eijlam was fond of Fionna. Fargal scowled as he watched flames consume the pile of wood that fueled the fire in the hearth. Having grown up only around humans and wizards, Fionna never knew anything about elven life until Eijlam simply shared himself with her. His life, a life he does not want anymore, even with me in it, Fionna sputtered as more tears ran down her face. I'm orphaned too, Papa. What are you doing to my own heart? Her whole neatly balanced and ordered life turned upside down, all because of the intrusion of Eijlam. She felt like running away. And yet, if any harm should come to him, she thought to herself, I think I would lose my mind. Fionna clutched the edges of her pillow. Burying her face, she screamed. At first she screamed in frustration and anger, and then she screamed again for her sadness and loss. Then Fionna screamed for EJ's loss until she dropped into exhausted, dreamless sleep. I miss you, was all Fionna could say, while looking down at the food she brought for him. She sat quietly near the stony-faced Eijlam. It was hard to believe this was the same kind-hearted boy she had been with and learned so many things from in the past 6 weeks. 3 days had passed, and he refused to talk, or eat, or even look at her. I miss you, Fionna repeated herself, as her eyes welled up in tears. Eijlam was confused at the extreme range of emotions he was experiencing. He scared himself, and was finding out now he was relieved that the wizard had restrained him so he could think on it. 3 days he was inside his head, reliving the events that led to his breakdown. The one thing he knew he did not want to do is hurt this strange girl any more than he already had. Fionna has proven nothing less than kind and a friend to me, EJ kept reminding himself. The battle inside his mind and heart raged on. The wizard's paralysis enchantment was left to wear away slowly. Fargal knew that if EJ didn't find enough reason to stay, there would be no stopping him from going. He wanted to give him every chance to understand all the consequences of his actions before he made any more rash decisions. Pedithem Haisuvalin. EJ spoke to the silent girl who had been sitting by his bed for days, his eyes still fixed upon the rafters. Yes, we can speak as friends, EJ, Fionna replied solemnly, having almost given up on him. I wanted to die, he said flatly. I know, but I would miss you. Her shoulders and her frown sunk even further. The wizard told you to say this so my heart would be tricked. Fionna looked up and was startled to see EJ thoughtfully staring straight at her. No, she said, calmer the second time. I'm sad that you've suffered this pain. She was otherwise at a loss for words. He continued to look into her eyes as if searching for something. I am weak again, little one, and broken. However, I see you are truth to me. He sighed as he looked away with narrowed eyes. Fionna blinked and wasn't sure what to say. Too much silence passed between them, so she asked meekly, "Did it hurt?" Then she realized that was probably not a good thing to ask. "Yes, Fionna, my whole existence hurts," EJ said with a sarcastic edge. She had never met this angry side of him before, so she decided to stop asking questions. "Okay," she said to his sulky expression. "Okay then." He folded his arms. They stared at one another for some time, as if to read each other's faces. "I do miss you, EJ." He sensed her beginning to cry again. "I do not wish for you to be sad." He looked at her with concern, instinctively wanting to put his hand on her arm for comfort. But then he thought better of it. "I cannot help it," she said. "You pity me then." He turned his eyes away, staring up at the ceiling. "No, I'm sad for what you've been through, but I pity myself for being orphaned, and losing you would make me feel it even more." The sting in her nose signaled more tears on the way. She wanted to drop everything on the floor and just run out of the room. "Oh," EJ placed his hand on her, just in time before she bolted. He peered into her drooping face as she hung there. "I had not thought of that," he admitted. Eijlam looked up at the rafters, letting out a slow breath of resignation. He rubbed his face with his hands and pulled himself up to a sitting position in bed. He was himself again, but this time he was no longer the helpless elfling she had been taking care of. "I am hungry, Fionna," EJ quietly said, putting his hands out to take the bowl of stew she had brought for him. Book 1 of Tales of Eldalorn can be found on Amazon.com right now. If you've been thinking about podcasting, go to your nearest app store, download the free Anchor app, or go to Anchor FM. They have all the tools you need to record or edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. The Anchor team also helps you distribute your podcast with one click. If you're listening to me right now, that's proof that it works. Mind blown. There's no rules or minimums. It's everything you need to podcast in one place. Anchor FM. It's only a click away. There was a resigned seriousness in the days that followed. As weeks passed, Eijlam decided to eat and live. Fionna was relieved that he was not going to try to harm himself today. The wizard seemed unfazed by the recent events and continued making potions to heal all the ills of humankind. The song of Ilmatar rose to a beautiful crescendo of joy, but nobody in the mortal realm could hear it. A warm breeze floated in off the plains to the east, and it smelled like cactus blossoms in bloom. EJ felt homesick for Eldalorn, but he did not wish to go there and find it abandoned. Besides, he thought staying here with Fionna was as good an idea as any. "You speak good Elvish, girl," Eijlam said one day, poking fun at her playfully. He picked up a wet shirt and proceeded in mimicking her as she hung the freshly washed clothes on the line. Her eyes flashed at the loaded remark. EJ watched closely for it, and there it was. She narrowed her eyes and glared at him. He narrowed his eyes right back at her. Do you suppose it's because of your red hair that you are so fiery-tempered? EJ teased. I have heard such a thing is truth. Fionna squinted as she countered and shot back. If you are trying to teach me something about elven culture, again, just say it. The words came out harsher than she meant. I'm just making fun, Fionna. EJ frowned, actually feeling a bit bruised this time. Oh, Fionna suddenly got very quiet. Her heart felt crushed in her chest every time EJ came near her. How can I live with this pain inside my heart? Fionna whined. Sleep with me. I will comfort you, EJ gently said. What? I am speaking truth. It is the way of Eijlam. EJ was dead serious. Do you understand that you could say anything is the way of Eijlam, and I would not even know the difference? Fionna spat in exasperation at her own ignorance. I do not practice deception, Fionna, EJ said quietly. He looked down into her face, and Fionna saw how genuinely handsome he had become. Her insides clenched up, and she felt like throwing up on him. Instead, she childishly echoed his words with great exaggerating mouth movements and rolled her eyes as she pushed herself away from him. Attempting to be humorous again, EJ said, I will let you keep your clothes on, Fionna, if you must. He copied her posture and rolled his eyes too. Like in the bathing pool, he blinked as he added that last part. Eijlam tried to pull off a courtly stance, comically bowing to accentuate his words. He never smiled like he did before his breakdown. This time he did make a puppy-eyed face as he gestured, and Fionna almost smiled. Instead, she only sighed, watching him, and felt sad again. Fionna didn't understand. Eijlam's intentions were honorable. Every time he tried to speak to her, his words seemed to come out all wrong. EJ only spoke the truth. Among Eijlam, touching gestures were not taboo, and innocently sleeping in the same bed was customary to soothe and heal among the elven clan. Eijlam could only watch as Fionna walked away to continue her daily chores. He didn't go with her anymore because it seemed to make her even more solemn and untalkative. Eijlam felt even more alone than ever. If that's even possible, he said to himself as he watched her walk away from him again. Fionna spent her nights trying to get rest, and all she managed to do was grow bags under her eyes and make her mop of hair even wilder. Stop touching me! Fionna shook out her hands as if she was trying to flick something away off her fingers. Do you truly wish for me to leave? EJ asked with real hurt in his eyes. No, I'm sorry. I should be the one to leave, Fionna said sadly. This is all my fault. I need time to think, but I'm afraid to leave you alone, she said in frustration. EJ blushed, showing awkward embarrassment for her sake. Fionna, I am the one who is truly sorry now. I have burdened you with feelings of fear for me. I'm not going to hurt myself any longer. EJ earnestly looked into her eyes as he spoke. His self-inflicted wound was long healed, and time had shown him some purpose in his new life. EJ took her hand earnestly and placed it where his heart would be on his chest. He held it there. She could feel the steady thump of his strong heartbeat beneath her fingertips as he spoke. I can see now how the weight of my past actions has disturbed your peace. You need not think on this. If you desire to leave, I will be here when you get back. Sincerely. EJ blinked his beautiful odd-colored eyes as he made his vow to her. She could almost feel his breathtaking smile, but it never came. Instead, EJ said, "Let me share with you one last tradition of my family." He gently sat her down at the table and began to comb her tangled hair as she had done for him so many times in the past. Elven kin, even the smallest of elflings, all know how to braid each other's hair when needed. After all, you cannot move through the trees if your wild tresses keep getting caught in the branches. EJ explained the reasoning behind the tradition in the way his mother had told him. His fingers easily plaited the sides and created a web of intricately woven braids. It calmed the tangles into long, beautiful strands. Each clan has their own style of braiding, EJ went on calmly. This is also the way our whole family would wear our hair for gatherings and seasonal festivals. Fionna didn't know why that upset her so much. She just politely smiled at Eijlam and kept her thoughts to herself for later. Fionna planned on leaving as soon as it could be arranged. It seemed like a very good idea to travel to her family's home village of Velavar to see if there was anything Fionna could learn from her lost clan. She had always held the thought of someday making the journey. It had been hundreds of years since her papa found her there, so she had little hope of learning anything, but it was as good an excuse as any to get away for a while. From the wizard's home in Drustenloch, Velavar was many leagues to the east to the Vodla River and then north. I will miss you, EJ echoed her own words, feeling already orphaned and alone at the sight of her leaving. Fionna could see the pain written all over his worried face. I will miss you too, was all she could muster as she warmly hugged him goodbye. Stay out of trouble, her papa cautioned as he handed her the hat that would cover her ears in human company. She kissed him on the cheek. He suddenly looked very old and tired. Fionna mounted her white pony and rode away, leaving all her troubles behind. EJ tried not to think how his heart felt at that moment. It seemed like her leaving was sudden, like his mother's departure. This is nothing like what happened before, EJ angrily told himself, blinking back tears in the bright sunshine. She has not gone from this realm. Ninani Gwadin, my Fionna, EJ whispered under his breath. I will wait to see you again. He sadly stood by the gate watching down the empty road for a long while before he finally turned around and went inside. The wizard Fargle seems to be on a mission. EJ is homesick, and he really hasn't found his own way in the world. Fionna is still confused, and instead of facing her problems, she's running away. Elvish Lesson of the Day. At the end of the story, EJ says, Ninyan Negwadin. As you may recall, Nin means me, Ninyan Negwadin means I cry at your leaving. It's another way of saying my heart is breaking. Ninyan Negwadin.